Hi, so after having looked at planning our revision effectively, now we've got to actually get on with it and memorize stuff. This is something that's useful for both GCSE, AS and A2 revision, but for media, a quick caveat before we start. Memorizing facts is the first step. You get very, very few marks for what you've memorized in media. Virtually all the marks are for your ability to apply what you know to new situations and new answers. So don't think of this as the be all and end all. This is really your first starting point for your revision. To that end, one of the most effective ways of actually memorizing anything is to interrogate it and ask, why is it like that? That kind of helps you to understand the whole concept much more easily rather than just memorizing it as a fact, which you're likely to forget later on. Examples I've given you there. In media, the success of an advertising campaign depends on the audience watching it. If you ask yourself why, then that will cement the idea that audiences have an effect on advertising campaigns because you've kind of manipulated the information. Similarly, in film, the camera angle affects the way a subject is represented. Why is that? Well, if you think about what it's doing to the audience and the audience's point of view on a certain situation, then you'll understand really, really clearly how the camera angle affects the subject. So don't learn facts by heart. Ask yourself why they're true. That way, you'll definitely understand them a lot better. But we still have to actually memorize a lot of facts sometimes, and mnemonics is one of the best memory tricks that you can use. You use the initial letter of a group of words to help you remember them in order. Okay, they're very good for sequences or remembering a whole bunch of facts that are related to each other. So, for example, north-south, northeast, southwest goes never eat shredded wheat. Alternatively, naughty elephants squirt water. Or alternatively, never ever support wolves, or if you're going to be really controversial, never eagerly snog witches. Completely depends on what sort of a personality you've got here, but some are better than others. So physics use this with Richard of York gave battle in vain for the colours of the rainbow. You've probably done that at GCSE. In media, for instance, if we were learning the pyramid of media, the order in which the media come, the largest one is the platform, obviously, and then you've got the medium, the genre, individual texts, the narrative within text, language and form, and meaning. So you've got a list of letters there that you could need to memorize in order to remember them in your head. So please make girls take no lip from men might be one way of doing it. Or not. Let's think about the media studies key concepts. We've got codes and conventions. Well, that includes genre. We've got narrative. We've got media language and form. All of those are also part of codes and conventions. But then we've also got representations. We've got audiences and we've got institutions. And if you can create a mnemonic from this, then you're more likely to remember them. Can you? Floria is another technique. It provides hooks for information in your memory and makes them easier to recall at a later date, especially if you're using the idea of interleaving in your revision so that you're seeing them often enough. Look at the following list of words for 40 seconds, then see which ones you remember. Now I'm bored now, you only get 20 seconds. Let's have a look at what you remembered. Floria is a system that stands for first, last, outstanding, repeated, interesting, and associated. And basically it means that those are the most likely things that you will remember it. If you look at the memory chart here, this is how much you remember certain things. So the boring ones that you've got no association with are down here, but there are certain others that you're likely to remember twice as much up here. The first one, for instance, you're more than likely to remember. The last one you're also more likely to remember because it's the last one you saw. But similarly, outstanding, anything that sticks in your mind. Clearly the word nipple was put in there to be outstanding for you. Also, anything that was repeated, you're likely to remember. The word and was repeated twice, therefore you're likely to remember that one, even though it's not a particularly interesting word. Anything that was interesting, and that could be a personal thing, for instance, boxing. You might think, oh, right, I can remember that one. And similarly, words that are associated with each other along here. So for instance, boxing and glove, that's two words that I can put together rather easily. Similarly, we had glue and pen. So they will be a lot more easy to remember. If we go back, you can see that there are certain ones that might be outstanding. Spider-Man is one, nipple is another for certain types of people. I have no idea. Taylor Swift stands out purely because of the size of it actually in that list. And putting those together, if you were going to make good use of that technique, Floria, then you might put the ones that are more difficult to remember at the start, at the end, or you might put other words in that are easier to associate them with. So, put the most important information first and last. They're the most likely things that you're going to remember. When you're thinking about what you're revising, think about how you make the key information outstanding. So for instance, you could do a drawing of a concept that you really, really remember, a cartoon or something like that. That will help you to remember it. Similarly, repeat important facts. If there's something that you've got to learn, put it in 3-4 times. Again, interleaving your revision will really, really help with that because you're going to be seeing it consistently over a period of days. Make it interesting. Use images, mnemonics, whatever you choose to use. If it's interesting, it's more likely to go in. Reading a bunch of words doesn't really work. One of the best tricks that certain magicians do if they are trying to remember a series of objects is to create a story around the objects. And they can almost then visualize themselves going into the story world and they can see where all the objects are situated, and that makes it much easier to remember for them. And lastly, make links between the information so that the association leads from one fact to another and makes it easier to remember that link and the narrative between them. So, 3 techniques for you to use, and hopefully they'll help you get the best from the memorization aspect of your revision. Interrogation, ask why. Mnemonics, use the first letter and get words that really help it lock into your brain. And Floria, first, last, outstanding, repeated, interesting, etc. Help your memory to retrieve those key facts. Try them for yourselves now, see how you get on.